It was a cold and windy afternoon when a young girl, no older than 12, sat on the cracked pavement, her small hands trembling as she clutched a basket full of wilted flowers. Her clothes were ragged, barely keeping out the biting cold, but her face showed no sign of despair. Instead, there was a determination in her eyes, one that had been shaped by years of struggling to survive. This girl, whose name was Lily, had known nothing but hardship her whole life. Her parents had passed away when she was just a baby, and since then, she'd been forced to sell flowers on the street to make enough money for food, often going to bed hungry. But life has a way of turning unexpectedly, and sometimes the most unlikely people can be the ones to change your fate. What Lily didn't know was that on this very day, as she struggled to sell the last few flowers in her basket, her life would take a dramatic turn. Her story was about to change forever, though she had no idea how far-reaching that change would be. Lily had always dreamed of a better life. She would often daydream about what it would be like to live in a warm home, to wear clean clothes, and to have a proper meal every day. But dreams like those felt as distant as the stars. She had resigned herself to the idea that this would be her life, always living in the shadows of wealth and comfort, but never quite touching it. Little did she know, someone had been watching her from afar, a person whose life was as different from hers as day is from night. That person was Charles Montgomery, a wealthy millionaire with a heart as large as his fortune. But Charles wasn't the typical rich man you'd imagine. He wasn't selfish, arrogant, or out of touch with the world. In fact, he had spent most of his life donating his wealth to various charities and helping those in need. However, he had always longed to do something more personal, something that would make a true difference in a single person's life. It was on a routine drive through the city that he first saw Lily. At first, it was nothing more than a brief glance from his car window, but something about her caught his attention. There was a spark in her eyes, a quiet strength that made him want to know more. As he continued to watch her over the next few days, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to help her, that fate had brought their paths together for a reason. One afternoon, unable to ignore his growing curiosity, Charles made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He approached Lily and asked her about her life, and for the first time in ages, Lily opened up to a stranger. She told him of her struggles, of how she woke up every morning not knowing where her next meal would come from, and how she dreamed of a better life but had no idea how to achieve it. Her raw honesty moved Charles in ways he didn't expect. After that conversation, Charles couldn't stop thinking about her. He knew that he had the means to help. And more than that, he felt an undeniable connection to her. He made an impulsive decision to adopt her, to give her a chance at the life she had always dreamed of. However, he didn't want to tell her outright. He wanted to surprise her. So, he arranged everything quietly, preparing to bring her into his world of luxury and comfort. And so, a few days later, Lily found herself in an unfamiliar car, being driven to a mansion that seemed like something out of a fairy tale. She had never seen anything like it. The tall iron gates, the lush gardens, and the grand staircase leading up to the front door left her speechless. She had no idea what to expect, but she wasn't prepared for the shock that was waiting for her inside. As she entered the massive foyer, her heart pounded in her chest. The walls were lined with priceless paintings, and the floors gleamed with expensive marble. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfumes. She had never even imagined a place like this existed, let alone that she would one day be standing in it. For a moment, she thought she might wake up and find that it was all just a dream. But no, it was real. She was here, and yet, as she was led into the grand living room, something felt off. The lavish decor, the polite servants, the fine china, All of it seemed so foreign to her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here, that this life of luxury was too far removed from the world she knew. It was all so overwhelming, and she struggled to process it all. But there was one person who seemed to offer her some comfort in the midst of her confusion: Charles. He greeted her with a warm smile, his presence exuding a calm assurance that somehow made everything feel more real. He reassured her that she was safe, that she was home now, and that he would take care of her. Despite his kind words, Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. As she sat down, a million questions raced through her mind. Was this really her life now? How would she adjust to all of this? And most importantly, who was this man who had brought her here? Was he truly someone she could trust? The tension in the air was palpable. Lily's thoughts swirled as she tried to comprehend what had just happened, while Charles watched her quietly, waiting for her to take it all in. But before she could respond or ask any of her questions, the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the mansion, loud and unexpected, breaking the silence. Lily's heart skipped a beat. What could this mean? Who else could possibly be involved in her new life? She stood frozen in place as Charles rose to answer the door. But as he reached for the handle, a strange feeling washed over Lily. Something told her that the life she had entered was not as simple as it appeared, that there was much more to the story than she could see, and whatever was behind that door could change everything. As Charles reached the door, Lily's mind raced, and her heart thudded in her chest. She wasn't sure why, but the ring of the doorbell had shattered her sense of calm. The comfort Charles had provided, though genuine, didn't quiet the unease building within her. The feeling that this grand life, this unexpected change, might not be as simple as it seemed, lingered in the pit of her stomach. What was behind that door? Who could it be? Charles opened the door with a smile, revealing a well-dressed woman in her early 40s, with sharp features and a calculating gaze. She was someone who looked entirely out of place in the humble world that Lily had come from. The woman stepped into the house with confidence, almost as if she owned it. "Ah, Charles," the woman said, her voice smooth and cold. "I see you've gone ahead and brought her in." Lily's stomach churned. There was something about the woman's tone, something sharp and unfriendly, that sent a wave of discomfort through her. Who was she? Why was she so sure of herself in this house? As if she had a claim to it. Charles turned to Lily, noticing the tension that had crept into her posture. "Lily, this is my sister, Vivian," he explained, his voice still warm, though there was a subtle change in his demeanor. "Vivian, this is Lily." Vivian's eyes flicked over Lily with an almost imperceptible sneer, before she offered a stiff, businesslike nod. "Charmed," she said, though it didn't sound like it. Lily didn't know what to make of Vivian. She didn't like her, and the coldness in her voice only made the mansion feel even more foreign. But she remained quiet, not wanting to cause any trouble. She had already been thrown into a new life. What was the point in questioning everything so soon? As the evening wore on, Vivian seemed to settle in quickly, her presence casting a shadow over the warmth of the home. She didn't make an effort to connect with Lily, but she didn't have to. Her mere presence was a reminder of the things Lily didn't understand, the things she wasn't sure she was ready to face. It wasn't long before Vivian began to make subtle comments that seemed to be directed at Charles, but had a way of making Lily feel small. "Charles, I can't believe you're just bringing in a girl from the street like this. Do you really think she'll fit in here? This isn't some charity project," Vivian said, as they sat down for dinner, her voice cutting through the room. Charles, ever the calm and considerate man, didn't flinch at his sister's words. But Lily, feeling vulnerable in her unfamiliar surroundings, shrank into her chair. "Vivian, that's enough," Charles replied, his voice firm but still soft. "She's here because I believe in her, and she's my responsibility now." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Your responsibility? Don't you think you're being a bit naive? People like her don't change just because you give them a few nice things. What will you do when she can't adjust to this life? What will you do when she starts to cause trouble?" Lily's heart raced. She didn't know what Vivian was getting at, but it was clear that the woman didn't approve of her being there. She tried to shrink further into the shadows of the room, feeling small and exposed. Was this all a mistake? Was she truly welcome here? Or was she just an experiment to prove something to Vivian? The tension between them was thick, but Charles quickly turned the conversation to something lighter, clearly wanting to avoid a deeper argument. The evening continued, but Lily's mind remained unsettled. Something was brewing beneath the surface, something she couldn't quite grasp yet. She had no idea what had caused this tension between Charles and his sister, but she could feel it, like a storm waiting to break. The next few days didn't help ease her fears. Vivian continued to make pointed remarks, always just a little too sharp, always just enough to make Lily feel as though she didn't belong. Every time Charles wasn't around, Vivian's true attitude seemed to come out, as if she was testing Lily, trying to see if she could rattle her. One afternoon, as Lily wandered through the mansion's expansive gardens, trying to find some peace amidst the overwhelming changes in her life, she was confronted by Vivian again. This time, the confrontation was more direct. "You think this is a fairy tale, don't you?" Vivian's voice was low, almost a whisper. "You think Charles is your knight in shining armor, but you're nothing more than a pawn in his little game. Do you really think he cares about you, about your future, or is he just trying to prove something to himself?" Lily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't realized how much Charles's kindness had meant to her until now. She hadn't realized how much she had come to depend on the hope that this new life could be the escape she had dreamed of. But now, doubts began to creep in. Was Vivian right? Was Charles just doing this out of guilt, or some need to rescue her, rather than truly caring about her well-being? Vivian's eyes were cold, and there was no hint of compassion in her voice. "You're not special, Lily. People like you come and go. You'll disappoint him. You'll let him down, just like everyone else." Lily swallowed hard, trying to push the words out of her mind. She didn't know what to believe anymore. But as Vivian walked away, leaving her alone in the garden, something inside Lily snapped. She had spent too many years believing in her dreams, believing that someday someone would see her for who she really was and give her the chance she deserved. But was this the chance she had hoped for? Or was this just another test she had to endure? That night, as she lay in her new room, staring at the grand ceiling above her, she couldn't help but wonder how much of this was real, how much of Charles's kindness was genuine, and how much of it was driven by something else. Was she really his responsibility? Or had she just become a symbol for his own redemption? And as she pondered these questions, she felt the weight of Vivian's words pressing on her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that the life she had entered wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Something was brewing, something dark and unresolved, and Lily had a feeling that it wasn't going to stay hidden for long. The following days were filled with an uneasy tension, each moment weighed down by the unspoken rivalry between Lily and Vivian. No matter how much Charles tried to smooth things over, the underlying discomfort was impossible to ignore. Lily continued to feel like an outsider in the mansion, as if she were merely a guest in someone else's life. Vivian's cold demeanor and cutting remarks made her question if she truly belonged here, and her doubts began to fester. But just when things seemed to be spiraling, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while walking through the garden again to clear her head, Lily overheard a conversation from the open window of the study. Charles's voice was calm, but there was a noticeable urgency to it. Vivian's voice, however, was sharp and full of bitterness. "I still don't understand why you're doing this," Vivian was saying. "She's just a girl from the street. She'll never be able to fit into your world, Charles. You're only setting yourself up for disappointment. She'll ruin everything." "I'm not doing this for myself, Vivian," Charles replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "I'm doing it because I believe in her. I see potential in her. She deserves a chance, something I never had growing up. I'm not going to let you or anyone else tell me who I should help." Lily stood frozen in place, her heart hammering in her chest. She had never heard Charles speak this firmly before, especially not to his sister. It was clear that there was a deep emotional weight to his decision, something far more personal than she had realized. Her thoughts swirled. Was it possible that Charles really cared about her? More than just a way to prove something to himself. She felt a rush of conflicting emotions: relief, doubt, hope. But then, Vivian's voice broke through again, cold and menacing. "You're fooling yourself, Charles. You can't save everyone. What if you're just doing this to make up for the guilt you feel about our parents? You've always been the good son, always trying to make up for their mistakes. But this is different. You can't keep pretending that you're some kind of hero." Lily's chest tightened at those words. Guilt. Was that what Charles was really feeling? She had always believed that he had adopted her out of kindness, but now she wondered if there was something deeper at play, a complicated web of family, expectations, and unresolved pain that she didn't fully understand. Charles's next words were soft, but the pain in his voice was undeniable. "Maybe you're right, Vivian. Maybe I'm doing this to make up for everything I couldn't do for them. But it doesn't matter. I'm doing this for Lily now, and that's all that matters." The conversation faded as Vivian's footsteps retreated and Lily stood there, trying to process everything she had just overheard. It was a revelation. Charles was not just helping her out of some misplaced sense of charity. He was doing it for himself too, to heal wounds she hadn't even known existed. The next morning, Charles approached Lily in the garden, his face soft with concern. He could see the unease in her eyes, the questions that had been left unanswered, and he knew it was time to clear the air. "I owe you an apology," he began, his voice steady but sincere. "I know you've been struggling here, feeling out of place. And I know that Vivian has been making things harder. She doesn't understand why I brought you here, but I want you to know it's because I believe in you. I see something in you, something that I didn't see in myself at your age. I've made mistakes, and I've spent years trying to atone for them. But you're not just a project for me, Lily. You're someone I want to see grow, to have a better life." Lily stared at him, her heart a whirlwind of emotions. She had been so unsure of him, so skeptical of his motives. But hearing him speak so honestly, so openly, she began to understand the depth of his commitment to her. This wasn't just about fixing the past. It was about offering her the chance to build something better for herself, a chance that had once been denied to him. "I'm sorry," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't understand. I thought maybe you were just helping me because you felt sorry for me. But now I see. You've been carrying your own burdens too." Charles nodded, his expression filled with understanding. "We all have our burdens, Lily, but we don't have to carry them alone. We have a chance to change our futures together." For the first time since she had entered the mansion, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had come to the realization that she wasn't just a charity case, that she wasn't just some lost soul being taken pity on. She was a person with her own potential, and Charles believed in her. And maybe, just maybe, she could believe in herself too. Over the following weeks, the bond between Charles and Lily grew stronger. She began to feel more at home in the mansion, gradually adjusting to her new life. Vivian, though still distant and cold, couldn't deny the changes she saw in Lily, and for the first time, Charles's relationship with his sister shifted. The tension that had hung between them began to loosen, though the cracks in their bond still remained. But Lily knew that her future was no longer tied to her past. She was no longer the girl selling wilted flowers on a cold street corner. She was Lily Montgomery, a young woman with opportunities, with a future to build. As she stood in the grand garden one morning, the sun shining down on her, Lily realized that she had not only found a new family, she had found herself. It wasn't a perfect life, and it never would be, but it was hers. And that was enough. And as she looked at the mansion, she thought about how far she had come, how much had changed in such a short time. She had been given a chance to rewrite her story, a chance to grow beyond the limitations of her past. She no longer had to dream of a better life. She was living it.